Hi, everyone. Brad Kelly here. Today, we're going to go through the AP NFL All Pro picks and react to each selection, compare it to an All Pro ballot that I put together for my website, the Slant Route. Make sure you subscribe to this channel using the button in the upper right hand corner. Let's get right into it. The AP first team All Pro on offense was Aaron Rodgers at quarterback, Derrick Henry at running back. The tight end was Travis Kelce, and he was a unanimous selection. And the wide receivers were Devontae Adams, Stefan Diggs, and Tyreek Hill. Those are the exact choices that I had on my mock NFL All Pro ballot on the slantroute.substack.com. Aaron Rodgers, his touchdown interception ratio just really stood out and led the league in touchdown passes, had 8 more than the second place. That was Tom Brady. Rodgers had 48. Brady only had 40. I think he was clearing away the #1 quarterback in the NFL this year and should be the NFL MVP. Derrick Henry became just the 8th running back in the NFL history to rush for 2,000 yards. Obviously, a very dominant season, a huge stretch to end the year as well. I think he was the clear-cut choice for the top running back in the NFL this season. Tight end Travis Kelce, kind of the same deal with him. I agree with his unanimous selection. He was second in the league in receiving yards, which is just I think has only been done a couple times before. No tight end had ever led the NFL in receiving yards, and Kelce was actually leading late in the season. Really a historic year production-wise from Travis Kelce. Wide receivers, Devontae Adams, Stefan Diggs, and Tyreek Hill. Devontae Adams led the NFL in receiving yards per game. Stefan Diggs led the NFL in receiving yards, and Tyreek Hill with his dynamic playmaking obviously really popped in that game against the Buccaneers when he had over 200 yards and 3 touchdowns through about a quarter and a half. Those are my exact picks for my first team, and those ended up being the AP All-Pro picks as well. Complete agreement as far as the skill players on the first team offense goes. Now, their offensive line was different a little bit than mine. They had David Bakhtiari, Jack Conklin as the tackles. The guards were Quentin Nelson and Brandon Scherf, and the center was Corey Linsley from Green Bay. Not a lot of disagreement here. I think all of those players were either on my first or second team All-Pro or in the honorable mention. The only thing that is tough is Ali Marpet from the Bucks, just having to kind of compete with Quentin Nelson, and also Wyatt Teller from the Browns. I think had one of the best guard seasons of anyone. He played in 10 games. I think kind of knocked him down to the second team. As far as the offensive line goes, completely understand. I wish Tristan Wirfs would have got right tackle. Tampa Bay Buccaneers right tackle rookie. I thought he had a great season. Jack Conklin at right tackle was the pick of the Cleveland Browns. His pressure rate was extremely low, and I think ultimately that's what got him onto the first team AP All-Pro. Looking at the defense, TJ Watt was one edge player, and Myles Garrett was the other one. Same exact edge players that I chose. TJ Watt leading the league in sacks. Myles Garrett is up there as well. I mean, 2 great players, 2 dominant players. I think they were the clear-cut choices. Interior defensive line, Aaron Donald and Deforest Buckner. I had Aaron Donald, Chris Jones, but I did have Deforest Buckner on the second team. Completely understand why they went with Buckner. He had better raw statistics than Chris Jones. Aaron Donald, as dominant as always, he's just putting up double-digit sack seasons left and right from his interior defensive line position. Just ridiculous. I think he's still one of, if not the best defensive player in the NFL. I think as far as the defensive line goes, having Watt, Garrett, Donald, and Buckner makes a lot of sense for the All-Pro vote. Like I said, I would have put Chris Jones, but Buckner was right there with him, probably the #1 contender for that spot. Completely okay, and I, to an extent, agree with everything they had going on the defensive line. When it comes to the linebackers, the AP All-Pro voting went Fred Warner, Bobby Wagner, and Darius Leonard. Not a huge agreement there, putting Darius Leonard on that tier. I think his reputation kind of outweighed his play this season. Fred Warner definitely deserves to be in there. That's exactly why I had him the first team. I thought that Levante David and even Eric Kendricks, for the games that he was out there, had better seasons than Bobby Wagner and Darius Leonard. But as far as reputation goes, consistency goes from those guys, I think it was there. I don't necessarily agree with having Leonard that high, especially in the first team. But he did have a great season last year, and there were parts of this season that he continued to play really well on a top 10 defense for the Indianapolis Colts. Understand that he's the leader of that defense, and that's his reputation and his standing as their leader is gonna garner him votes. They had at corner Xavien Howard and Jalen Ramsey. I think those were the obvious choices. Those are the same cornerbacks I had. Xavien Howard had 10 interceptions, I believe it was, led the league. Whenever someone has that many picks, obviously their passer rating when target is going to be very low. His was less than 50. I think that's extremely impressive. Jalen Ramsey just had a lockdown season covering mostly number one wide receivers, traveling with the number one wide receivers. You know, some defenses will have a corner who plays on the left and a corner who plays on the right, not the Rams. The Rams will move Ramsey around, have him lock down the number one wide receiver for the opposing team. And his passer rating when targeted was in the 50s as well. Just a dominant season from Jalen Ramsey, in my opinion. He was the best defensive back in football during the 2020 NFL season. Their safeties were Tyrann Mathieu, Minkah Fitzpatrick, and Budda Baker. And the reason there was three is because there was a tie. They eliminated the defensive back slot because the tie for the safeties. Kind of understandable that those three players were the three. I love Minkah Fitzpatrick and what he's done with the Pittsburgh Steelers. They have allowed, I believe, the least amount of yards in the deep middle of the field, which is where he generally plays. Tyrann Mathieu for the Chiefs continues to be a huge playmaker for that defense. Budda Baker, kind of in a similar realm as a Tyrann Mathieu as far as his role goes. I don't know if he had the quality of season that Tyrann Mathieu had. I think Baker was more of a second-team All-Pro, honorable mention type, but his evolution as a safety, the fact that he was now the highest paid player, paid defensive back in the NFL, paid safety in the NFL, and then really played at a high standard throughout the season, got him to the first team. Like I said, I didn't agree quite with that. I think I would have went back to the defensive back slot on the AP All-Pro team. They've done that in the past. I thought Justin Simmons kind of deserved to be in there. Maybe Adrian Amos from the Green Bay Packers as well. Looking at the second team, I think this is where really the issues start with the AP All-Pro team and the fact that their qualifications can get kind of loose at times, and the way that they vote for it doesn't necessarily reflect how people feel as far as positions go. The thing that stands out is because Travis Kelce was a unanimous selection for tight end, it meant that Darren Waller didn't get any votes for the AP All-Pro team, meaning the second team tight end just doesn't exist. It's a vacant spot. I think they need to be able to vote for first and second team because a guy like Darren Waller deserves to be second team All-Pro. He had an excellent season. He can line up at tight end. He can line up outside. Statistics-wise, he was clearly the number 2 tight end in football when it came to his receiving stats. I think he deserves to be on it instead of just a vacant spot, especially when you look at the level of his level of play was an All-Pro level. There's no reason that only one tight end should be able to get votes, and then there's just a vacant spot. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Darren Waller should have been second team All-Pro at tight end. Meanwhile, they had a huge tie for wide receiver. DeAndre Hopkins, Justin Jefferson, Calvin Ridley, DK Metcalf, and Cole Beasley were all named second team All-Pro because of a tie in the voting. 5 wide receivers on the second team All-Pro after 3 were named to the first team All-Pro. That's 8 wide receivers now saying are All-Pro caliber wideouts. I think Cole Beasley had an excellent season. I don't think that he, looking at his how much he deserves being All-Pro, outweighs Darren Waller's. I know they're different positions, but the fact that Travis Kelce can take all the votes for tight end, but we also have a player like Cole Beasley getting on the second team All-Pro, who once again had a great season. And as far as pure slots go, he's one of the best in the NFL. But did he deserve to be on the NFL All-Pro team over a guy like Darren Waller? No. And I think that's kind of where the hiccup in the voting process happens. As far as those other wide receivers go, absolutely deserving. Guys like Hopkins, Jefferson, Ridley, DK Metcalf had huge seasons at times. Really, you could say it for all of them. At times, they looked like maybe the best wide receiver in football. DK Metcalf early in the season was putting up 90-yard and a touchdown games like it was going out of style. DeAndre Hopkins had a great year. Obviously, had the Hail Mary catch that really, set the highlight reels on fire against the Buffalo Bills to beat them. Justin Jefferson, 1,400 yards as a rookie, just ridiculous. And Calvin Ridley actually overtook Julio Jones for the number 1 wide receiver in the Falcons offense. Extremely impressive years for all of them. And Beasley had one as well. I just think that there has to be a different way to vote, and we got to get a tight end in there and not have 8 wide receivers be named All-Pro. Quarterback was actually a tie again between Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen of the Buffalo Bills. I think Josh Allen, similar to Cole Beasley, had a huge year. I think Patrick Mahomes was just on a little bit of a different level. I think both of them they might both get votes for NFL MVP. But I think Patrick Mahomes, if you're going into the playoffs right now, and even if you're a Bills fan, you're taking Patrick Mahomes over Josh Allen right now. And I think because of that, I don't know if there should have been a tie and three quarterbacks should have been named to the All-Pro team. I think it should have been Patrick Mahomes safely as the second team All-Pro quarterback. Running back was Alvin Kamara, same running back I had on my second team. Just had a great season catching the ball and running the ball, had that huge game, the 6-touchdown game against the Minnesota Vikings. It's tough that the flex spot went to a wide receiver and not a running back, because I think Dalvin Cook also had a deserving All-Pro season at running back. The offensive line for the second team All-Pro was Garrett Bowles at tackle, Ryan Ramczyk at tackle, Joel Bitonio at guard, Wyatt Teller at guard, and Ryan Kelly and Frank Ragnow splitting the votes in a tie for center. I really liked Frank Ragnow. I thought I voted him for the first team center on the All-Pro team. Joel Bitonio, Wyatt Teller, both of the Cleveland Browns had great seasons at guard. And like I said, I think Wyatt Teller actually played the best out of any guard in football. Just unfortunately, he missed time. I think that's what made him fall to the second team. As far as the tackles go, Garrett Bowles had his first really standout season. I also thought that Trent Williams had a great year kind of quietly for the San Francisco 49ers. Thought maybe he might get the nod for the All-Pro team, but Bowles and his ascension and the improvement that he made, I think ended up that needed to be recognized, and that's ultimately why he got those votes. And Ryan Ramczyk, the right tackle for the New Orleans Saints, also had a strong season by his standards, probably not what he typically is. He's been playing the whole year. He's just been banged up, and I think his level of play has dipped because of that. And that also bumped Tristan Wirfs off the All-Pro team, who I thought was a first-teamer. I thought had a great year, only allowed 1 sack, and it was to Khalil Mack. I think that's unfortunate for him. I think Ramczyk got it more on reputation. Now, like I said, he's been playing banged up. I just don't think his play lived up to what Wirfs did this season. Ryan Kelly, the center, who split with Frank Ragnow, I think has also had a very strong season for the Indianapolis Colts. Looking at the defense, their second-team edge players were Khalil Mack and Zadarius Smith. Those are my second-team edge players as well. Both of them had really solid production. Obviously, they set the edge well against the run, can rush the passer. I think, once again, those are kind of the obvious choices for the second-team edges. Interior defensive linemen, they had Chris Jones and Cameron Hayward. So like I said, I had Chris Jones on my first team, but I had Deforest Buckner and Cam Hayward on the second team. Really, as long as those four end up getting recognized as All-Pro, I'm pretty happy, pretty comfortable. I think those two really had standout seasons. Cam Hayward had a very productive year as well. No issues with those two players being the second team interior defensive line. Linebackers, Devin White, Demario Davis, Levante David, and Roquan Smith were named second-team linebackers because, once again, there was a tie. Like I said, I thought Eric Kendricks had a great season. I know that he ended up missing time, but I thought his play was at an extremely high level, both in coverage and against the run. I thought that he might get a nod in the second team. Devin White and Levante David both had excellent seasons for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I thought David might have a chance in the first team. I think Devin White had excellent sack production this season, being a great blitzer, and David just racked up the tackles like he always does. He's a great underrated linebacker, in my opinion. Roquan Smith, I think this is the first year he made a big step up and really elevated his play. And I think, once again, similar to Garrett Bowles, he's getting recognized because of the improvements he's making. He also had a great season playing next to and near Khalil Mack. Cornerbacks they chose were Jair Alexander and Tre'Davious White. I do have a little bit of an issue with this, partly because I think Stefan Gilmore was definitely one of the 4 best cornerbacks in football. Yes, you might be saying you might be a little bit biased, but if you look at Gilmore's numbers, he allowed 1 touchdown in 11 games. His completion percentage allowed was 57%, and his yards per target was 6.7 yards. He was as locked down as ever. I know he was banged up here or there, and he allowed 1 touchdown to DK Metcalf. Other than that, he was as good as ever. And I think really the only reason that he ended up missing out on the first or second team was because he missed 5 games. With that said, Jair Alexander and Tre'Davious White both had excellent seasons. If they had the defensive back slot on the second team, I think one of them could have been put there. Jair Alexander only allowed, I think, like 4.9 yards per target or something like that. Crazy, great production and coverage. Tre'Davious White, though, allowed 4 touchdown receptions and similar yards per target and completion percentage allowed as Stefan Gilmore. I think the reason that he ended up getting notched because he played in 14 games to Gilmore's 11. Their safeties were Jamal Adams and Jesse Bates III. I actually had Jesse Bates III on the first team. I thought he was excellent, rangy, free safety. Jamal Adams had crazy sack production for his safety. I mean, he can play near the box and rush the passer. I believe he ended up with the most sacks of all time for a safety. Really impressive years for both of them, and very understanding as far as the production goes on them being named to the second team All-Pro. So that's how the All-Pro team stacked up to my picks and my thoughts on the whole team from top to bottom, first team, second team, offense and defense. I think there were obviously some snubs to the team, namely a guy like Tristan Wirfs, who I mentioned a couple of times, or Eric Kendricks or Stefan Gilmore I thought could have been put in there, Trent Williams as well. But ultimately, I think the teams ended up lining up pretty well for what I anticipated and what I had chosen, what I had seen on the NFL film throughout the season as well. Let me know who your snubs are, where your issues with the first and second team All-Pro are in the comment section on Twitter at BradKelly17. Let's get into it. Let's see how the film stacked up for every player in the league and who really should have been put on it and where your issues with those teams and your disagreements with those teams are. Leave those comments below. Until next time, thank you guys for watching.